engagement there.
You're listening to Head South Radio with your host, Kat Meyer, a podcast dedicated to prioritizing pleasure and removing the stigma and shame around sex. We're here to be curious and have an open conversation about sexual health and relational wellness. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. The information discussed is not a substitute for professional medical advice.
Hey there, I'm your host, Kat Meyer. This week I chat with my friend and fellow yoga teacher, Zaina Budayr. A little background, Zaina is the founder of Electric Culture, which is a hybrid of a community and a resource platform with a mission to amplify the voices of women everywhere that have suffered in silence with their experience of digital abuse. Zaina's own personal experience happened not too long ago when a loved one violated her trust and in an act of betrayal used confidential information about Zaina and blasted it on Twitter. In this episode, we discuss digital abuse and how it is becoming all too common. If you aren't familiar, digital abuse is a form of emotional and domestic abuse which happens online. We also talk about the long-term, life-altering effects it can have on people and how it falls into a gray area when it comes to preventing and holding those responsible accountable. With all of our episodes, we start with a quick meditation, so please find a comfortable seat and settle in. So to get started, I like to do a little meditation with everyone, kind of just to settle in. Find your sit bones, sit down well. And then from that grounding space, find some integrity with your spine to grow a little bit taller and lengthen up towards the ceiling. And then let the shoulders roll down the back. So finding a heaviness with the elbows so the shoulders can draw away from your ears. And then find the buoyancy in your body, the lightness, the softness, the ease. And then start to notice anywhere there might be some tension, some holding, maybe some irritability in your physical body. And so just start to bring the attention there and maybe just try to soften without too much manipulation, just inviting some ease into the areas where there might be some agitation. Taking a moment to acknowledge your breath and awareness of the quality of your breath right now. And Zaina, from your own words, just setting a personal intention for this podcast. So in your mind, just setting what you would like to achieve or how you would like to express and how you would like your words to land. And setting an intention for the listeners that they might receive this and feel seen or heard or be able to relate to the words in the conversation that we share. And then from that information, from that space, can they go out into the world and express themselves more fully and share their experience with others. And whenever you're ready, you can just blink your eyes open, take in the room, take in the light, take in the screen. Hi.
Hi. That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. I just find it a nice way to ground and connect and settle into this conversation. To get started, tell us about yourself, who you are, where you are, what you're doing.
I'm Zaina, and I'm a yoga and meditation teacher based out of Brooklyn, New York. I'm the loving mother of an orange cat named Fez, and we're just sitting on the fort over here.
And then tell me about Electric Culture.
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I had a loved one break my trust and compromise some of my personal information that was sexual in nature. And he was extremely reckless with that information online. The hours that passed after that lash out were extremely volatile. I felt my whole system was online. I felt very panicked, and I just wasn't for sure what to do, because I think in my mind, when you think of digital abuse or digital bullying, I was not the face of that, right? Like, I was a 31-year-old working professional, straight woman. To me, that was not my narrative and not my story in any way. Those hours after, I was really trying to secure my space, and that was mind, body, soul, and my physical body, which is very online. And that was also looking at my computer and my phone feeling like I couldn't trust those anymore either. I wasn't really for sure if he could live access those items, or I just wasn't for sure. So I got on Google and I was trying to find some tools and resources to start grounding things. And I just could not find a space where I felt seen or that I could identify with. And so I think in part of processing the grief of this violation and the loss of this loved one in my life and just what those emotional ramifications were, I found that being creative and starting to build community and then reaching out to my own community was the most healing thing. And as a result, it birthed Electric Culture, which is a community I created for adult women who have been victims of digital abuse. It's a space where we can all band together and reclaim our voice and our power and fight back against all the forms of digital harassment. Because in my case, what was not used against me was a naked photo. And that is the one thing that actually has the most protection around it. I was in this weird gray area where I didn't know if my violation even counted. So, yeah, Electric Culture was built to be a tool and a resource so that we can advocate for that safe space online and to really promote the stigma of women's online sexuality and the culture of our self expression and voice to shift to a new direction so that there's less shame around it.
We're just going to dial it back a little bit. So digital abuse, because this might, like, I had never heard that phrase used that way before. I've heard of online bullying, harassment. And so digital abuse is the use of technology to abuse someone in the form of verbal abuse or emotional abuse. That's the medium that the abuser chooses to lash out or express. And so with that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, it's so nuanced. You're still being violated, information, private, sexual nature, sometimes not even sometimes sexual nature, but something that's private, that's shared between intimate partners or in a relationship, is then expressed or exposed without your consent. So it's a breaking of consent, it's a breaking of trust by an intimate partner. This is the conversation we're having around digital abuse. It's not like teenagers bullying one another. There's resources around, teens and bullying, and there's, networks of parent groups and school groups that are kind of trying to work on that. This is for adult humans who have in some form of partnership, whether it's long-term, intimate, romantic, whatever it is, and someone in that breaks the trust and uses information, uses pictures, anything that could be then digitally distributed and then violates the other person. And within that, there's no system around protecting people in this experience. That's what my understanding is, just from talking with you before and like trying to kind of understand what digital abuse categorically is. Where does it fall here?
Yeah, exactly. That's what gets so confusing, is that it's this nebulous web and has so many tentacles reaching out that if you're a victim of it, it's hard to figure out what box you go into because there's not even a box. And the law is so slow. If our digital world is so fast, then the law is a dinosaur. So the two just are not merging in the same place when we need it the most. And digital abuse is really, to me, it is actually simple. It is the use of technology with the intent to control or to harm someone else. And that can be a loved one, like a partner, a friend. It can also be a family member. But we also have identityless trolls online that can also be a part of the fueling of digital abuse. A single incident counts as well as multiple incidents. So if you've had one experience with this, that does count as being digitally violated, because I think what's clear to all of us is that it only takes once for something to go viral or for information to get put into the hands of someone that you did not consent to. It doesn't take multiple incidents. So it really is the use of that technology against you.
I think also I haven't experienced what you've experienced with a partner, but yeah, I think a lot of people are experiencing that. Even someone like not hacked my account and took my images and created a whole nother account. And that, just that little incident, I like disassociated. because I was like, I don't even know what to do. This feels so foreign and scary. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to contact. And, friends and family were messaging me. My gym called me and they were like, hey, someone's messaging me saying you need money. That sort of experience on that level was violating and scary. And I can't imagine that then leveling up to in sexual nature or things that can kind of harm your professional world. That's the thing, is like, it's one incident. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe it's a snap moment, a snap decision that someone did. And they're like vendetta or angry in that moment. But the repercussions, the long term, some of that stuff doesn't even come clear until months later with the digital world. Like, things don't show themselves, that the length of time that this kind of violation can affect someone is pretty long, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted you to answer that too, of like the mental health effects on the person when you experience this.
Yeah. I think what sort of floored me the most, and I'm coming at this from the seat of a yoga and meditation teacher. I was like, if anyone's got a toolkit, it's your girl. I have a system to lean on. But until my world grounded, which I would say took about a month after this happened, that is when the mental health ramifications started to come up. I experienced severe depression. I didn't get off my mom's couch for about a month, and I had panic attacks. I had a very hard time dating, and it just really took me off guard as someone who has spent a lot of time working with the body, working with trauma. I thought I really understood. On top of that, there is a basic breakup at its most groundwork level. You're sad, you have grief, you miss that person. And so that anxiety of what happened, I started isolating a lot. And I'm a very extroverted person, but I felt so embarrassed. I just did not trust my surroundings. I know that in the heat of the moment, we get mad, we lash out, we say things that we don't mean. Think of the biggest argument that you've ever had with a loved one. I'm sure all of us want to take back half of those words. Online, you can't really take it back. Even if you delete it, someone can see it, or you've passed it on to someone when you were upset. Now they have it. So there is an unforgiving factor in that, and a shame that to me as a woman really lingered. It's taken me only till recently to be able to release a bit of that shame that I felt from being put in my place, quote unquote, from this lash out. Very deep ramifications of these actions.
In these situations, does the person who's doing this, the person that initiated this abuse, recognize it as abuse? If the person posted this and then deleted it, they think it's gone. But it's like, what accountability is held for the person that's doing this?
In my experience and the work that I've done with women in this space, 9 times out of 10, that is not ever acknowledged or recognized. If anything, it's minimized as you're overreacting. You're upset about a breakup, or you're being a girl about this, whatever, whatnot. But in my situation, there's never been a sorry. There's never been a, wow, I lost my temper, that I took that too far. There's never been an acknowledgement of any of those things. And I can speak for a lot of women on that it's very rare for that to be acknowledged. There is a lot of disassociation that happens to be able to do that in the first place. And I think the sorries, I always just wanted a sorry. Yeah, I don't feel a lot of the times the person that took that action understand. Yesterday, for example, I was watching the Harry and Meghan Markle documentary, and Meghan Markle was saying that a lot of the press and the internet trolls didn't realize there's an actual human and a face to the end of their words. And I felt that in this. And this is someone who knew me very, very well, that I wasn't a thought at the end of that whiplash,
Mm-hmm.
that I am a person with feelings. So digital actions do manifest in real life. And that's such an important piece of awareness to have always.
I also think it's important for the person who is on the receiving end of this abuse that they know that is abuse. That's the thing. Is like, I think socially, culturally, it's easy to like, oh, whatever, we deleted it, it's fine. like stop overreacting. And then the person being like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Other violations have now come to light of like people now 10, 15, 20 years understanding like, oh, that was actually a violation of my space, my privacy, my physical being. But now it's in the digital world and we're in the same cycle of like, we can brush it under the rug and forget it. But like understanding that this experience, it's not just something to be brushed under the rug. It is a violation, and either looking in and doing work for yourself to help yourself cope or grieve or get through that phase. Because that's the thing, is like it threw you on a completely different path and you kind of have changed, who you are in a way, how you experience the world through this lens of what has happened, and in ways greatly helping and supporting other people. But it's also like, hey, I wasn't planning this in my life. Like, this isn't the trajectory of my life. I didn't see myself going.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so knowing that you are not alone. So people listening to this and maybe experiencing something like this, not recognizing like, oh yes, someone DMing you nonstop, someone not listening. Like when you set a boundary and say like, I'm not okay with this, those types of things are actually harassment under the umbrella of digital abuse. So it's not even recognizing. Sometimes people don't even know that that's a form of this because it is so new. It's not so new because I'm like, we've been in the digital era for half of my life now, but yet some of these things are so nuanced or so socially accepted, like some of these behaviors online. Even if you have the slightest inkling like, oh, this doesn't feel good, it's probably some form of harassment or abuse, and trying to create the boundaries necessary to protect yourself. And so that was my next question, is what do people do to prevent these things from happening, or how can you kind of be proactive in protecting your privacy, protecting your sexual stories, all of those things that can come up and be put on the internet? How does someone protect themselves?
So I think the most important thing, first and foremost, is trusting the system in your body and what alerts it gives you. If something is flaring up and you feel like it's a full body no or a full body yes, it is a full body no or a full body yes. And so that is what will make it a violation. That means that a boundary is crossed. Now, again, what makes this complicated is it really, really depends on the medium. It really, really depends on the platform and in what form. I wish I was like, call 1-800, I've been violated, that I could give people like a 911 number to start navigating, but it really is so dependent on the situation and the platform. There's some amazing spaces. One is Heart Mob, and I can give you these just as some leads. And there is also womenslaw.org. And I'm grateful that there are these different groups, as well as Electric Culture, all working together to try to create clarity, because that's what I bumped up against. I was like, so who do I talk to? And I wasn't quite sure. It really depends on the medium. Social media platforms do have abuse hotlines. What's frustrating is that it takes eons for them to answer, if they answer at all. In my case, part of the violation was posting on Twitter and I could not get it taken down. And when I went to click on this is sensitive content, it basically highlighted it, like it was like, this is sensitive content instead of removing it.
Oh, yeah. It put like a label on it, but it was like, here's a big yellow flag. Look at it. Yeah.
Frantically messaging them, and it was my cousin who helped me get back into my Twitter. It was not Twitter. That's why we are all navigating this together and trying to make it more clear. And I wish I had a more clear answer.
Yeah, you kind of answered my other question of like, what are the different social media platforms doing to help protect people? And it is so nuanced, and it does take a lot of time considering how massive some of these companies are. It's kind of bizarre that they don't have a designated team that's handling these specific cases and making it very easy, like something that you can just click on and it can pull it down until they review it, even instead of putting a flag on it and being like, it's sensitive content. The opposite of like, let's pull it down and then we can review it. And if it's not, we'll put it back up kind of situation.
And I desperately that day just wanted to talk to a human being, and I kept getting a bot. And I know I'm asking a lot. These are from these big tech companies with so many people, but I just wanted to know that I could connect with someone to be like, hey, we're going to take this down, review it, and we'll shoot you a message. It was hard just talking to some chat box. That's what I do find to be unacceptable. There has to be a way that we can build a system of accountability in this.
And you briefly mentioned it earlier, like the judicial system in this country. And that's the thing is like, if this is something that happens, if someone did this to you and they were in Europe or if they were in another country, like how do we navigate the system? But even within this country, there are so many nuanced legalities and things that are considered and not considered. But how do people navigate this? And like, what can you do? Can you press charges against this person? Can you file something to protect yourself? Like in the same way that people get protection orders, can you do that digitally?
You can go to the police and file it, but again, it's more proof that there's documentation that you wanted space from that person, less that if they harass you online, that a cop is going to show up to your computer and stand next to you.
Yeah, right.
It's different than the domestic abuse vein, even though digital abuse is a faction of a domestic abuse relationship. Another hard piece in this is, especially when if it's content that is sexual in nature, what makes it more isolating is that you don't feel comfortable going to your support group or your community about it. And so you literally just sit there and swallow it. It's just very, very layered.
Yeah, it's pretty paralyzing from what I'm gathering from what you're explaining and how you're describing this. I'm like, it's really hard because I can understand that like the shame or the guilt, people's narratives could be like, well, you put yourself in this position. How did this person get access to these things? Or why did they know this? Or, that sort of cultural, social narrative around like you didn't do the things to prevent this from happening or you allowed this to happen to yourself. It's hard to break through that and find the support you need in those moments.
Yeah. And in my situation, for example, I grew up in a Muslim Arab American household. The person I was in a relationship with that did this was also a part of my Muslim Arab American community. Both of us grew up in the States, but have our Eastern roots. And I felt in this situation that I was being slut shamed or as a female put in my place from a very more Eastern place culturally. Like I felt our Arab roots coming through and our Muslim roots coming through in this, and less of our more open Western upbringing. So culture comes into play, and there's a lot of times as a victim you're not going to feel safe voicing that, and that is probably the biggest and most important thing for me with electric culture is to clarify that you are not alone, and a lot of people are experiencing that, and a lot of women are struggling with this, and that it's a place you can come to vocalize and be like, hey, I want to be heard. I'm tired of sitting with this shadow and this darkness by myself, and knowing that you have a community to go to. You can come, you can share your story, you can send emails, you can send letters, you can DM us on Instagram. It's there for you.
And then is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to share information regarding this subject about digital abuse or electric culture or any form of like violation in this era, in this modern time, the modern times of violation?
I think it's more so around boundaries and to always trust yourself when you feel that your boundaries being crossed. And that does not mean that there has to be a law to defend you if you feel like your boundary is crossed, and to always trust yourself. And if something is unacceptable to you, then to really hear yourself out and figure out why. And there's tools and resources here to help support you.
It's the relatability of your experience, and you don't have to actually go through this experience. So that's kind of the thing of like, this is such a unique thing. And so then the details of what's happened don't actually need to be said. It's the experience and the shared human experience that is like, I just need to feel seen and heard in this moment because I'm not in my body, or I'm kind of a bit lost or disoriented through this experience. And so just knowing that other people have shared the experience, it doesn't have to be the same, on Twitter or on, Instagram, whatever it is. I think it's that community of recognizing the shame, the fear, all of the things that go on through this digital abuse is just being seen and being able to share. Because you're right, there is this stigma around like maybe even sharing it with your close friends or family members because of whatever reasons. To have this kind of community is really important for people, even just as a starting off point of being like, okay, I can now express what's going on. So maybe then I can go to someone else in my life and talk to them about it. One of the other things, that's what it just came back to me, yay, is that you mentioned that it's been a 2-year process. Like this happened 2 years ago. And so to kind of share with people that messaging of like, yes, it's a very quick thing that happens. There's a long-term ramification. There's things that you have to kind of navigate and dig through, but also there is this other side where you can feel empowered and you don't have to feel like you're still working through that. You mentioned that, like removing the shame. So kind of just encouraging people to like, it might feel discouraging years down the road when you're like, why am I still feeling this way? Why do I still feel depressed or scared or like hesitant in dating? Why is this affecting my current relationship? And acknowledging the fact that like, yes, these things will come up, but it's okay. It's part of the human experience to kind of let these things happen and recognizing them and working through them and knowing that it can be a longer journey than one anticipates.
Listen, I'm so happy I get to share this story and that you brought this up. I went to a soul cycle class yesterday, and honestly, the last month or two is the best that I have felt in 2 years. There has been some clarity. I don't know where the clearing came from, but it comes and it always comes. It might take a long time. It might feel like it is never coming, but the clouds will always part. Your girl goes to a soul cycle class, minding my own business. I woke up yesterday morning feeling like $1 million. I was fine. Get into this class, and it's like dark in there, and they had candles lit. And at the end, he blows out the candles. He's like, turn the resistance all the way up. We're doing the last little push. We're going to go uphill. And he plays Crash Into Me by Dave Matthews, turns out all the lights. And that was our song, me and my ex's song. And it was so I sat there on my freaking Soul Cycle bike bawling.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where. And I texted my girlfriends after, just like, I think I just had a religious experience. Like, I don't know. Our body holds on and it holds on and it holds on, especially when it has to do with love and the way that we care about people. And I felt that song triggered just so much for me. And I just, and I cried on my Soul Cycle bike and on a perfectly okay day. So if you're having a hard time, everything is valid. Every single inch of your healing and your grief process is valid, and it is not linear. It comes up, it goes down, it comes up, it goes down. And then the crest of the wave becomes wider and wider and wider till the up and downs start to shift farther and farther apart. But you can find release anywhere. I found it on my Soul Cycle bike, and I wasn't expecting it. And that brings me to the fact that I think the biggest struggle I've had in this process after this happened is the fact that I don't hate this person. For me, on my own lens, I was like, this is my weakness. This is what makes me such a weak person, is that I really still care about this person. No, I don't need them in my life. Definitely a boundary. But how do I still have empathy? Why? Does that mean that something is wrong with me? And that's really been a ball of yarn I've had to unravel. And you hear it a lot from abused women, or, people judge when you go back to these situations. But then I've really realized, I think as women, that's our superpower. It is empathy. It's holding space. It's having your boundary, knowing that you don't need that energy there. But love is love. And love always wins. And I'm not saying get back with your abusive ex or that that's ever okay. It's not closing off your heart. It's been so scary to date again. It's so scary. It's so hard to put yourself back out there, but you're deserving of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was just going to say, you shouldn't feel shame for having empathy or seeing that, because it's not a convincing yourself of that, allowing yourself to still feel love. Because I think when you do shut down to love, whatever way you feel you need to express that, and that could be just from afar and just thinking of this person and saying like, I hope you're okay from afar. And that's a boundary and that's safety. And that's not something to be ashamed of. Because I know you can probably say that to somebody and they'd be like, why? He's such an asshole. Like, fuck that guy. And it's like, no, because carrying that around with you, like, fuck that guy, is actually just going to hurt you. You're carrying around hate instead of love. And so if you choose love and that's the lens you want to see the world, that doesn't mean that you have to love this person, care for them in a way that violates your boundaries. It's just the expression, and your experience doesn't have to be from a hateful, angry place, a victimized place. You get to choose how you experience the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to include this person, but it doesn't mean you have to hate this person either.
And that has been what's been the most empowering, is to release the heavy, because hate is heavy. And that is taking me time. The anger has taken me time to release, but that forgiveness has been empowering for me. If I could put a wish in the genie lamp, it would be that at some point, maybe it takes 50 years from now, that there's a clearing conversation, right? You also have to
Mhm.
have space for someone else's own healing journey, even when you just don't freaking get it. I still don't freaking get it. I don't get you, but you know what? May you find some clarity one day.
When you're altering your emotions and your feelings to kind of fit the mold or what other people believe you should feel, that's the problem. That's the thing you shouldn't be doing. It's being your full self. And that's not trying to convince yourself to get back with somebody or to love them through this. It's more about where you stand in your power.
Because true love, you won't have to sacrifice yourself. You won't have to shrink. You won't feel that shame. And so that's why these relationships are not the one.
Right. Yeah. It's the coming to a relationship 100% of yourself.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, I have a wild card question, which is in connections and relationships, what are you craving now more than anything?
Oh gosh. Wow, what a question. You know what? I just want safety and transparency and to just have a good time. Dating has gotten so heavy and so serious. I've spent years looking for the threat and for the shoe to drop again from this experience, that now I'm like, you know what? If it's half body no or a full body no, it's a no. That's how I'm figuring out what safety means to me. But yeah,
Mhm. Craving that space, craving a space for trust. I just had another podcast recording where we kind of touched on that afterwards of like this space where that comes from is boundaries, and people don't recognize that. Having the boundaries creates safety, then allows for pleasure and play, and then you can enjoy your partner in that space. It's not about constricting or controlling somebody. It's just knowing and then communication. And so I think a lot of people, yeah, dating is getting hard, but I think if like people actually just let their guard down, because I haven't experienced online dating, but from what I've heard from friends, it's like it's starting to feel like interviews, like, memes of that where people are like, what do you do? Where do you live? All of these things. And it's like you're not actually even expressing yourself. It's about you. Who are you in this? And what do you want? And what are you craving? And so, hey, I'm craving a space where I can feel safe and vulnerable. Imagine starting a date like that.
I, and it might be a cultural thing, but I was raised to be very performative as a woman in relationships. I'm like, oh, do you need a lemonade?
Yeah.
I just feel like, you know what? I want to talk about my cat. Like, I like Lucky Charms, and I don't know. I don't want to perform anymore, and I don't want to shrink the things that I think are important. And I don't, I also realize that I do want to have babies, and I've been saying for a long time I wouldn't even voice that.
Mhm.
Realized it like a few months ago, I actually do. So I've started saying it, and it's been liberating in such a funny way. Like, how is that so liberating that I'm like, yeah, I love kids. I love babies.
Yeah, being yourself and not containing and projecting what you think. So being performative, projecting what you think the other person is looking for, or like this is, stereotypical of what men of this age are, I don't want to scare them away. But honestly, at some point the things you want are going to need to come out, because why are you getting into a relationship where the person is kind of being deceived by the information we're sharing on both ends? Like on any date, people are just kind of deceptively hiding themselves and going with what they think the other person would like. You're not actually being yourself. So no wonder this relationship isn't going to work out, because both people are kind of hiding and projecting and performing.
And why can't we scare them away? Like, if I say babies and you're scared, then we're not in
You're
alignment.
not it. You're not it. You're not in alignment. So then let's make some more room for the guy that's like, I want to make babies with you. I want to have a family with you.
Yeah, because everyone deserves to be their radical, unbridled self.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2023, everyone should just more babies, more of unbridled selves, and like just being yourself fully, owning the parts of you and not being afraid to express them.
Love all of it. Your dark days, your high days, your bored days, all of these days together is what makes you in the center of your life. And you deserve to take up all the space that you want to take up. Get loud. Be annoying.
Yeah.
Do you.
Yeah. And be seen and heard by someone. Whoever you're looking for, your partner, may they see you and hear you and accept you. So thank you so much. That's a wrap on the podcast.
Yay.
Thank you. I appreciate so much that you've shared your story. I know it's a very, layered story, and it's something that you're currently experiencing and going through, and brave enough to share and help other people through. Thank you.
Yeah. And I wish I had more clear answers on like the exact things to do. It's just like,
but that's the nature of what it is right now, right? That's why it needs to be said. That's why even just putting something out there, being like, hey, we actually aren't the resource yet, because there are no resources yet. We're trying to get these things, but the more people that band together, the more that this can then become a known issue, a known thing that society can get around and say like, hey, we actually need to change some of this shit because there's more than enough people experiencing it. And so how can we do that? So I think electric culture is that. So even though it's not something like, yeah, we have all the information available and downloadable things and all of this stuff, you're not there yet because it's so new and you're still experiencing it. You yourself have experienced this, and then your platform, electric culture, is so young. It's just banding together and then kind of navigating this, but work in numbers. And so people coming together and bringing this to the light is what's important. So it's not necessarily, here's all the information laid out because we know what's going on. It's like, no, actually nobody knows what's going on, but let's gather together and support one another through it.
And honestly, it felt good to talk about. So thanks for having the space for me to do so. I've really not talked about my side of it. So thanks for being so graceful with that.
I'm so happy to share it. And I'm so grateful that you've felt safe enough and vulnerable enough to actually express your experience. And I hope that it will be something that can help people, and they'll find electric culture and, help themselves get through these processes of, disorientation, violation. It's a scary experience, and especially in that realm.
Yeah. And it's just so complicated. Some of the stories I've heard are crazy, and I think we just got to do better. We got to do better and find a solution to a certain extent, at least.
So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Special thanks to all of our guests. Head South is hosted by Kat Meyer, produced by Isis Barlow, edited by Megan Hook, with music by Lily Rezi Rothman, graphics by Ella Chodos Irvine, cover art by Gina Ship Casey, and intro by Murph Meyer.
If you're looking for me